so many different videos on the site. It's not just the stories; it's the coping skills and the treatments. And
and what we'd like to see is, and we'd like to see more health among our youth and among everybody, right? And so we want to make sure technology isn't bad, right? Technology is wonderful if you use it the right way.
Right.
It can be addictive. It can be overwhelming. And we have to be careful because it's still coming for us, right? It's not going away anywhere soon.
We're here at the Paso Robles Podcast. I'm joined today by Kathy Long, and Jeff Long. So you guys are married?
Yes,
I'm guessing. Not brother, sister. Okay, got it. So I'll let you guys take the floor. Just introduce yourselves and what you do, and we'll go from there. This is a conversation. It's not really an interview, but I'll ask a few questions that pop in my head, and we can go from there. So, Kathy, you want to take the floor?
Sure. Yeah. So, Kathy Long, and I'm one of the co-founders with Jeff of Teens for Teens Help, which is an online mental health platform to support teens and young adults who are struggling with various behavioral health issues. I'm the program director, which means I just wear a lot of hats. And we can go into more detail about everything that we're doing with the nonprofit. I also am an acupuncturist, and I practice functional medicine part-time as well. I've done that for 28 years. And we have 2 children, a daughter and a son, 22 and 24. And they are certainly the inspiration for what we do.
Okay.
I'll let Jeff
I'm the other half. We started Teens for Teens Help, and it's important to know that it's teens, the number 4 teens help, because there are other Teens for Teens, and they're not us. Good organizations, but they don't work with youth mental health. And we came to this work very honestly. When our daughter was in high school as a freshman, she was diagnosed with anorexia and depression and a host of comorbidities, which started us on a 4.5-year journey of recovery. And along the way, it was very difficult. We were in psych wards and hospitals and residentials and treatment centers. And what we learned were some really important things, that not surprisingly, teens listen best to other teens, and that stories of recovery can actually save lives. And we have a story about that, but I'll let Kathy tell you about it. But that's how we came to this work, is we experienced it and we saw that there was a missing link and felt compelled to do something about it.
Yeah. So when our daughter was in high school and in her last treatment center, she went with the treatment center to speak at a high school. And she told her story. The next year, the high school requested her specifically to come back and speak, even though she was no longer at the treatment center. And she agreed to do that. And at the end of the talk, the second year, a young man came up and asked her a hug. And she said, okay, but why? And he said, well, last year when you were here, I was seriously considering suicide. And I heard what you had to say, and I heard your story, and I reached out for help, and I'm doing much better, and thank you. And that was really I call it our Oprah aha moment of kids need to hear these stories from their peers if we want to make an impact. And so we asked our daughter, if we created something where teens anywhere could hear these stories, would it be helpful? And she said it would have saved her years of struggling. And so
that was it. We were all in.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a more important thing to do. There's a mental health epidemic in our country, and in all highly evolved technological countries, it's really because of the onset of the smartphone and all the screen time. Yeah. And there's wonderful research about it. There's a book called The Anxious Generation, and it shows you that, this started the smartphone in 2008, and in 2010 it got into the hands of the teenagers. And, the rates of depression and anxiety just shoot straight up, and the rate of screen time shoots straight up, and the rate of social media shoots straight up, and then all the other issues just become bad. And then on the other side of that, this whole generation has less time in person. Our generation, we hung out with kids outdoors at the mall, whatever. And, their time together has diminished. And so they're not having that social interaction that is part of learning how to be a human and failing and figuring out life. And so they have greater anxiety and depression. And boys and girls have different issues. Boys spend a lot of time gaming. Girls, spend more time on social media. And so they're not the only factors, but they are the major factors.
Yeah, a lot of people think, it was just COVID and things will get better. And COVID was really just gas on a fire that was smoldering. And COVID's over and the numbers are getting worse. And so we can't blame it on COVID.
Right. This episode is sponsored by Valeria Noves with RE/MAX, your local real estate expert here in the Paso Robles and Central Coast. Whether it's your first home or your forever home, Valeria makes the process smooth, personal, and stress-free. She's bilingual, experienced, and ready to help. ¿Hablas español? Ella también. Call Valeria today at 805-212-6387 and let's get you a home.
And there are great therapies out there and there's great treatment centers, but if the kids don't go to them or don't have the language and the ability to, ask for help, then things are just going to be bad and we're going to see those suicide numbers rise. I mean, the fact is that 39% of teens today feel hopeless about their future. That's terrible. And so if they can hear from other kids that they're not alone, that somebody else has gotten through it just like them and they can too, it makes a big difference. And we've seen this time and time again with the kids that have come to our organization and participated and want to help other kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you guys went through it as the parent side. When something like that happens, you're left with a lot more questions than answers, right? So walk me through how that process was for you. Who were you reaching out to? Obviously, the internet's a great source to to get information. So who'd you reach out to? There had to be somewhere you were like looking first, right?
We did, obviously, what happened is the pediatrician said that our daughter needed to be put into a residential program immediately. And so, of course, I start looking up anorexia and eating disorder treatment centers. And the first thing you see when you look up anorexia is that it is the mental illness that has the highest rate of death. And so that's a very sobering, frightening fact that you just see over and over and again when you look this up. And we didn't know what to do. And I started calling treatment centers. You give them insurance information. Some of them would say, we treat disordered eating, not eating disorders. And I was like, what? I didn't know the language, right? I didn't know the language. And so you don't even know what to ask because you don't even know what you don't know.
Right.
And so we just kind of brailled our way through it.
It was confusing and it was difficult. And the whole process was so difficult. And like what they tell you at the treatment center and what the insurance tells you is not necessarily all true. And so the insurance says, you get 30 days and your daughter will go home and she'll be fine. That's not true, And so we kind of were so upset by this, and we did a ton of reading and we did a ton of research because we wanted to save our daughter's life. We ended up writing a book called The Parent's Guide to Anorexia.
Okay.
And we wrote that first, and that's when we thought, okay, we've given back, we've done our part, and our daughter is chosen recovery and is on her way. So, we thought we were done. But when her story saved that kid's life, and we realized, not only was it the story that saved her life, but it was the peer group of other teens in the treatment centers that saved her life. When she realized she was not the only one, that other kids go through this and other things and they get through it. That was really the secret sauce. And so you don't get that when you're in therapy, and you don't, get that from medicine. And so, these are things that we could create and offer that will help. And when we created the site, we created it because we didn't know where to go, right? And we wanted to create this funnel where kids and their family and friends could see stories of recovery, right? And know that they're not alone, they can get through it. And then informational videos narrated by teens so they could learn about their subject. What is anxiety? How does it work in my body? how do you treat it? What are the coping skills? And then the resources, because we want to funnel people from I have this issue to here's where I can go to get help.
This episode is sponsored by Pueblo Furniture in Paso Robles. Skip the credit card headache. Talk to Roger and get 0% in-house financing on quality furniture you'll love. Visit them at 1030 Railroad and 10th Street or call 805-239-5942. That's Pueblo Furniture. Comfort you want, payments you can handle. Y sí, se habla espanol. Just ask for Roger.
Yeah. We kind of wanted to create what we wish we would have found.
Yeah.
Right? As we were trying to piece it all together, which is why we wrote the book in the first place, right? It's small and it's informative, and you can digest it when you're in crisis, which is when you need it the most. And so, that was the first block of this.
Well, and the other
progress.
funny thing is we created it fully for teens and their friends and families. And what we didn't know is it turns out this is a wonderful tool for therapists and treatment centers, because kids don't often open up, you know. And we hear in our stories, I didn't open up to my first therapist or my second or my third, and I finally did, my life changed. And so therapists see these stories and go, I have a client, she's stuck. I want her to go watch Julia's story. And the client watches the story and goes, oh, I'm not the only one. And she got through it, and I can too. We had one girl whose therapist had her go to her site and look at a story. She watched all 90 videos. We have 140 now. And she got super excited, and it spurred her to get through her treatment. And as soon as she got through, she called us up and said, I want to share my story and help another teen.
Yeah, we get that a lot, actually.
Yeah. So one of the things so therapy, they don't open to the first, second, third. It seems to be normal with teens, right? Because it's really hard to get through, and you guys figure something out. They talk to other teens.
Right.
So one of the things that I think we can also probably like highlight here a little bit is you're taking them from one state of mind where they feel alone into another state of mind where they still feel alone therapy. So who do you guys like team up with therapists as well to try to get this a little bit more like fast tracked or anything in some way?
I think one of the important messages that kids get is, number one, you can't really make progress unless you do open up to your therapist. And number two is that therapist may not be the right one for you, and that's okay. It may take you 3 different therapists to find one that really works for you, and don't give up. Like, don't quit because the first one just really never clicked, right? And you tried and it still didn't work. It's like, don't give up. And because we're online, we're what we say local everywhere. And so it's really hard for us. Right now we're in the Central Coast. We were in LA before, but we're seen across the country. We have youth board members from 19 states. And so it's really, we don't directly say, oh, go to this one treatment center or that, right? Because we don't want to be that source. We want to just let you know that it's out there. I mean, eventually we would like to have resources in every state, and then they can at least know where to start.
Right.
It's a future project for sure.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by Lion Pro Flooring. Give new life to your floors with beautiful, professionally installed flooring. Whether it's hardwood, luxury vinyl, or carpet, your home deserves a quality you can feel and craftsmanship you can trust. Serving Paso Robles in all of SLO County, Lion Pro Flooring is your local expert in transforming spaces. Call or text 805-712-3710 for a free estimate today. That's 805-712-3710. Lion Pro Flooring, when quality matters. So you guys, I want to focus on the parenting part, because that's a big thing. Identifying your teens. And kind of watching and looking for the signs. Now, there's also like that overdoing it, like looking at every single part they do, and like you have to give them some room to grow themselves. Sure. So how do you help the parents navigate that?
The site is only for teens, but the information and the stories are certainly relatable, and I think it's important for parents to be able to access this information as well.
Yeah.
There's nothing on the site that we direct towards the parents. We've been asked many times, can we have like a parent tab? And we bring it to our youth board because they're involved in everything we do. and have been from the beginning. And they every time have said, no, this is our site.
Yeah.
If you want a parent site, start a new website. But that's not to say that certainly the information there, I mean, I wish we would have been able to see people's stories, especially, for us for anorexia, like what these kids went through, what it looked like and how they got through it. Because as a parent, it's like, it gives us hope. Like, oh, okay, we can, and you can also kind of learn maybe some things that aren't the best action to take based on what other kids have experienced.
Yeah.
I think one of the important things to know about our site is that, everything that goes on our site is both approved by our youth board and a board of mental health professionals, because it has to be accurate, right? And we're not mental health professionals. We're just parents with experience. And it has to also resonate with the teens. So they both have to approve it. Otherwise, we don't put it up. And to Kathy's point, one of the things we do besides the stories and the videos and the resources and the information and coping skills as well is our youth board gets to interview mental health professionals on something we call Teen Talks about topics that they're interested in. And it can be about eating disorders or depression or anxiety. It can also be about school and academic stress or college admission stress. One of the ones we have is on grief. And nobody taught me about grief. It's such an important topic. I tell all my adult friends, go to our website, go to the Teen Talks and look at the Teen Talk on grief and learn about this. I mean, it's so useful. And so, it really, we're kind of creating a library of just tremendous information and inspiration. And it can apply to anybody who's struggling, and we keep adding to it. So we have 8 or 10 categories now, but we're going to add even more because there's more subjects, but we can't start the categories until we have stories.
Yeah.
And I would say one more thing about parents is those Teen Talks, there is such really great nuggets in there. And for instance, the one about college admission stress, she gives lots of good information that parents need to hear and understand and their role in their kids' college admission stress, right? And what they're, maybe how to back off and, boundaries. And so the information, even though it doesn't say parent tab, all of it is super helpful.
This episode is sponsored by Santos Bros Plumbing. Are you in need of a dependable and effective plumber you can trust? Look no further than Santos Bros Plumbing, your trusted local plumbers in Paso Robles, California. Call them now at 805-360-4679. That's Santos Bros Plumbing. Yeah, so boundaries, right? How do you teach people to set boundaries, or how do you help them navigate to set boundaries? Because obviously you guys went through something, you had questions, and at the same time, kind of subconsciously started, as you learn, start setting boundaries. Because the more you learn, the applied knowledge that you start producing after that, you figure out, oh, I was doing it wrong before. This is what I need to do, and a product of that is setting boundaries. So how'd you guys kind of develop that for yourselves?
I think a big part of that is when we dropped her off at her first residential treatment center, they said, so you guys are in therapy too, right? And we were like, she's the one with the problem. We're fine. Yeah. And no, if someone in your house is to that level of needing support, it impacts everybody, and there's lots of reasons and layers behind it, and boundaries is one of them. And I would say that working on yourself and doing your own reading, getting your own therapist together individually is learning those things. And we both had support groups separately with parents, with kids that were going through different things, and we both learned a lot of tools that way as well. And I think the biggest thing for the parents and the kids is not to be shy about reaching out for support and help. And that's where you'll learn things like how to set those boundaries and what that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a big part of today's problem and potential help and tool is technology, right? So we talked about, you guys mentioned as soon as the smartphone was invented, you got that camera like a couple years later and even skyrocket more. us as human beings, we weren't meant to look at ourselves that much.
Yeah.
That's a big thing I learned recently.
Yes.
Where, our ancestors, they didn't have mirrors. So we never really looked at ourselves, maybe in, a puddle of water or something. But we were never meant to look at ourselves. And then with today's cultures, like that's all they're pushing sometimes.
Yeah.
So how do you help, or how would you help them navigate that, or at least make them realize like, hey, you're fine. Like,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah. We had a teen talk with a neuropsychiatrist, Jay Faber, on digital life balance. And, he's kind of a self-ascribed brain geek. And he talks about all kinds of creating those balances and the boundaries around social media, whether it's, the selfies or what websites you're spending your time on, and how to put up your own guardrails. It's another great talk with a ton of really good information. And I think parents would be like, oh, I need to hear that myself too, because they lead by example.
There's so much to unpack there. I mean, it's a whole nother podcast, but to be brief, if somebody is giving you something for free, you're the product. So what all these tech companies want is they want you playing the puzzle games. They want you on the social media. The longer you stay there, the more money they make. And they don't care if it's good or bad for your health. They want to make money. They're a company. And so that's their right. But they actually know what is addictive, the same way Vegas does, and how to keep you in the casinos and keep you playing. They do the same thing. They actually, one doctor calls it the race to the base of the brainstem, because they use psychology to keep people addicted and keep them on. And the longer you're on there, the more money they make, but the less you have a real life and real experience. And to your point, we're meant to be in tribes. We're meant to be in community. We're meant to add value to the community. So being isolated on your screen is the opposite of that. And it is isolating. And that's why the anxiety and depression have raised and raised and raised, not just for the kids, also for the adults, but at a much smaller amount, because the kids' brains are at that level where this stuff kind of gets caught on the hard drive and becomes more permanent. Kids shouldn't have cell phones and be on social media until really they're 18. The law is 13, but there's no way to enforce it. And they're going to try to make it 16 to split the difference and get it out of school so kids can actually be with other kids in school and pay attention in their classes. And so, I mean, that's a huge topic. I probably said too much on it right now.
This episode is brought to you by Rad Scooter Deli on 6th Street. Craving something delicious in Paso Robles? Rad Scooter Deli on 6th Street has you covered. Enjoy tasty sandwiches, fresh salads, and smoothies like the Banana Nut Blast, my personal favorite. Kick back on the covered patio, sip on a cold beer and wine, and enjoy the easy parking. Order online for pickup or dine-in. And here's a treat. Use promo code PODCAST for $5 off your next order. That's PODCAST for $5 off your next order. Open daily from 6:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Rad Scooter Deli. Local flavor, fast and fresh. So one of the things I like to talk about is how to positive spin things, right? Like the technology itself. This podcast itself is going to be very informational. It's going to help someone. The 10 people that watch or something, whatever. One of them is going to be like, oh, I'm going to go look at the website and see what's going on. So that's what I like to highlight. But I do also like to make things realistic. Is look inside your house and try to identify without freaking out, because reacting is not as the same as responding, right? And what are some, not tricks, what are some tools you would give somebody to kind of ask themselves, what are the questions that they would ask themselves to be able to identify it?
To identify that they're spending too much, more
to identify that themselves or a family member or something like that.
Yeah, I think your phone keeps track of every app that you're on and how long you're on it, right? And so sometimes, and we've talked to, there's a therapist friend of ours, and she'll look at that and to realize, she's on that game too long, right? So some of the guardrails are just being aware. Yeah. And like you said, The other thing one of the things that Dr. Faber was saying is that for the first 60 minutes on social media, your brain's actually growing and you're getting smarter. And that's the tipping point. After 60 minutes, it goes back downhill.
The brain actually shrinks.
Your brain actually shrinks.
Who wants that?
Right.
Right.
And so it literally it's working with what guardrails work for you. Is it a timer? Is it,
Right.
What's it going to be so that you realize, okay, it's been too much time. And, the other thing is to use the ability to look up all this stuff and research people to get you down the road of where you want to go. Mm-hmm. And his example was you want to go to school to be a vet. Well, maybe your social media should be following vet-related accounts, right? And people instead of just doom scrolling and then starting to feel bad about yourself because of your friends and their vacations that may or may not really be happening. And so it's just tools like that you can start to implement. And, one of the things that we notice, and even my kids notice, because I think how we are at home is you go to a restaurant. How many times are you at a restaurant and you look around and there's 2 or 3 or 4 people at a table and they're all on their own phones?
Yeah.
Right? That's wow.
I would consider that a red flag.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, and it is so common, right? So as a parent, it's hard, you can't say to your kids, well, you can't have a phone because everybody else does. But as soon as like 10 parents say, my kid isn't going to get social media until they're 16, then it can start to happen, right?
Yeah.
But it's really hard to be the odd man out, and nobody wants their kid to be the odd kid out. But as a parent, you can say, look, the phones go in this box at night, so you're not staying up and getting that blue screen light, which then interrupts your sleep.
Right.
Because there are basic building blocks to mental health that we've kind of lost in this modern world, is that you need the sleep, especially the young people, right? They need 8 to 10 hours, not 6.
Right.
And you need to eat whole foods, not processed foods, and not drink a bunch of, the Red Bulls to get all charged up when you need to go to sleep. And you need to be outdoors in nature and have exercise and be in groups. And so, a lot of our lives are so busy now that these basic things we've lost that we need as humans.
This episode is sponsored by Western Janitor Supply. They have cleaning supplies and equipment for any workplace. Call today at 805-238-2112. They provide an extensive line of chemicals, paper products, and floor equipment. Again, that's Western Janitor Supply, located in downtown Paso Robles. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I remember growing up, and this is, I don't know if you guys have read or seen this, but like McDonald's used to have a play pit or play area. And as you got older, they become more contemporary, dull. Like they grew up with us to keep us like in that ecosystem and stuff like that. Even like, I don't know if it's true or not, but even tricks are for kids. If you look at back then, they were shaped as fruit. Now, as you're older, they're just round dots of colored. So they literally meant it's for kids. Right. So I don't know if there's any, but it's just one of those like strategies that companies have. But it works everywhere. You get the kid hooked first. Yeah. Parents they want to give their kids to be happy. They give them things, but the parents have to realize like giving them everything is not going to be a positive outcome. Right. So what's one of the things that as soon as you found out, you dropped her off, right? What were you guys telling yourself on the drive back home? Like, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut that. Like, what was that conversation like?
I think it was more just complete
numbness.
Yeah. And just shock and depression. I mean, the fact that we couldn't help our daughter stunned me. I mean, we're the ones that are supposed to protect her and help her, but this was well beyond what we could do. And actually, eating disorders are incredibly complicated.
It's never just an eating disorder. It's anxiety, it's depression, it's body dysmorphia, it's, a whole host of things. And we had put her into therapy because the depression was obvious. Yeah. And then the coping mechanism, because she had to face and have these conversations with the therapist about depression, the coping mechanism became the eating disorder. And then the weight really dropped off. And so then that's now we're in survival mode. And so now you have to address the eating disorder, which meant the residential program, which meant now the depression spiraled out of control. So it's a really very multi-layered, difficult thing. And that was one of the things that inspired us to write the book. Because in the very beginning, they're like, your daughter has X, Y, and Z, right? All these diagnoses. Mm-hmm. And we were like, she's so broken. Like, how do we fix this? And how is she we just thought she was not the norm, that like she was like the exception. And then we did our research and we did our homework and we realized, oh no, this is normal, like air quotes normal for someone that's dealing with this. So, that became a diagram in the book of like, look, you have an eating disorder and then you have all these other things that are comorbidities. So you learn a whole new language and you realize, okay, this is just something we have to tackle this, right? And it's not going to be a 20 or 30 day, she's treatment and she's fine. It becomes wash, rinse, repeat in these eating disorder residential programs because insurance is dictating when they're medically stable. That doesn't mean they're well enough to be on their own.
Yeah.
So.
And there's so much more information even recently. I mean, in the past, probably the most famous person who died of anorexia from our childhood would
Karen Carpenter.
Be Karen Carpenter. And, people just went, just eat, just do that. And that's not the issue. I mean, they found recently, they used to say, it's an absent father and a controlling mother, just nonsense. It's like, let's put leashes on people to cure them. Yeah. It turns out that up to 80% of eating disorder cases can be genetic. And they simply have different hormones. So
it means there's a propensity to have an eating disorder? Like with all genes, they don't necessarily express.
Yeah.
But they can now see that genetically someone can be predisposed, and that is good information, right? Information is good as long as we can work with it and then pay attention and try to stave it off.
And to kind of just get back off of our daughter's specific challenges, the whole point is everybody has challenges.
Right.
Everybody has to deal with their mental health during their life. And our point is we just want to help you find a way to deal with your challenge so that you can continue to be who you want to be and lead the life that you want to lead, whether you have depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, or whatever, right? And so, the first thing is let's get rid of the stigma. Let's talk about these things. Let's find ways to heal. Let's find support groups. Let's, figure out what the combination is for you. Everybody's unique. Mm-hmm. Some people, need a rescue animal and medication. Some people need, mindful meditation and yoga. Some people need, different kinds of therapy, and they're all different. What works for you? Is it talk therapy? Is it EMDR? Is it, there's a myriad of possibilities, and it's figuring your way through the maze.
This episode is brought to you by the White Wave Wellness. Choose to live a healthy and fulfilling life. Wellness is more than being free from illness. It is a process of change and growth towards a mentally and physically healthy lifestyle. Reach out to Jennifer Hale to learn more about how this water can change your life. One of the things I like that you guys said is you documented it by writing a book, right? And I think that's very important for a lot of people to do just in general is to document. You can use the technology to document voice memos, videos, pictures, notes, whatever it is, because a year from now, you're going to be at a different state of mind. And you have to look back at something that you can reflect and grow from. And a lot of people aren't doing that. So how would you... you documented and I'm guessing you're still documenting. One way is the website, right?
Sure.
But one of the things that popped out is you said you have 140 videos now, they're growing. So that means the problem's still growing. That means the problem's still out there. At some point, maybe one day you'll say, hey, we went down. We didn't actually increase videos. It stayed the same for a while. That's the goal, right? What do you guys see how do you see this growing for you?
Well, for us, we always want to grow and add, because ideally we want 20 stories in every category.
Okay.
Right now I think we have 10 categories, right? So because we want everybody to be able to go to the website and find somebody that looks like them, right? Because that's what they're going to relate to. And so we just, from a documenting standpoint, it's like, the more videos, the more stories, the more informational videos that we can put out there, like Therapy Explained, which are really short, 5-minute videos that cover different types of therapy.
Yeah.
So that will ever, we want to do equine, and we want to do surf therapy and CBD and CBT. And so we just want to just keep growing. And the young people are documenting for us how they feel.
Yeah.
And they're giving us testimonials that we're now putting up on the website. It used to just be written, and now it's videos, right? And these are our youth board members that are like, wow, I'm so glad I found you guys. And, I love being on the board, and I like this video or that, and it really helped me. So they're documenting it. Hopefully will help other people realize how much they can get from the different so many different videos on the site. It's not just the stories; it's the coping skills and the treatments. And
what we'd like to see is, and we'd like to see more health among our youth and among everybody, right? And so we want to make sure technology isn't bad, right? Technology is wonderful if you use it the right way.
Right.
It can be addictive, it can be overwhelming, and we have to be careful because it's still coming for us, right? It's not going away anywhere soon. And I just lost my train of thought.
So documenting is a big thing right now for me. This is why I started the podcast. One of the things around 2017 is when I started really thinking about how am I going to document this. Podcasting wasn't as popular yet. You had Joe Rogan, you had a couple other people doing their thing. And then 2020 happened, but I already started dabbling with the audio and video part. So 2020 happened and then just blew up. And I was like, okay, I definitely have to get my skin in the game so I can teach other people how to do the same thing. Because documenting for me is one of those things where I'm going to be able to look back and see the growth, right? And a lot of people have that mentality of I'm stuck. And I think a big part of that is because they're not documenting.
Right.
I think that affects you. It almost challenges you 1% better every day than you were the day before. Right. So you guys have the website, you guys have teens, recording the videos as testimonials and their stories. Is there anything else you want to promote? Any events coming up? Phone numbers that people can reach out? I know you gave me the Crash Out Reach.
Yeah, we got the Crash Out cards, which, we've created for people to just, if there are shopkeepers, stores that cater to things that young people buy, we want them to have the cards. Anywhere where young people are going to be, whether maybe it's a boba shop. That reminds me, on our way home we can do that. So we want to get
these to the park cinemas.
Yeah. So we want the Crash Out cards to be anywhere where a kid can pick it up and realize, oh, there's actually a hotline that is there 24 hours a day that I can call, right? That's super, super important to us. Upcoming events. This will be the third year that we're part of the Slow Overdose Awareness Day, and I'm not sure when that is, the end of August. That's in San Luis Obispo. It's been at Mitchell Park the last 2 years. And then also with TEMA, there's a Journey of Hope event on September 27th, and that's at the Public Marketplace in San Luis Obispo on Higuera. Those are the only 2 events we have so far on the calendar.
But we also, our youth board does mental health events in their schools. In other words, they'll do presentations.
Okay.
And they kind of spread the word. They work on, mental health month. They do an action day and do a whole bunch of different things to get the word out. We have toolboxes, which is another thing. You didn't explain the toolboxes.
I did not.
Okay, so we have something that we've created with our youth board and with our professional advisory board called Healthy Coping Skill Toolboxes. And it's 4 boxes: an anxiety relief, a depression relief, an ADHD and grounding box, and a distraction box. And these boxes have materials in them, evidence-based in CBT, therapy, and also, things they can fill out and mandalas that they can draw on. And a lot of them also have cards that have QR codes on them so they can see another teen demonstrating a breathing technique or a grounding technique or art
really
therapy. Cool. And so we want to get these into schools, and they cost us $200 to make. So we try to get them into schools, and they're high school wellness rooms. And we've gotten a lot of youth board members because they've been in a high school wellness room, seeing the healthy coping skills kit, done the QR code, and they're suddenly on our site, and they're like, "This is amazing! I love this!" And so then they call us up and they join. And so that's just another thing that we're constantly doing. And our youth board, puts out social media and creates coping skill content, and that's what we want. Is we want teens spreading the message, reducing the stigma, helping other teens find a place to heal.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's awesome. The 4 boxes. That's pretty cool. I have a couple ideas on where else you can put those in or collaborate. But one of the things that I was thinking about right now, I just lost it too. It's funny. Hold on, it's gonna come back to me. So we talked about documentation. We talked about where you guys are wanting, how you want it to grow, and and all that stuff. And the last few episodes I've recorded, it's been about grounding yourself. And for adults, I think it's and you mentioned physical things in the boxes. That's what stood out, because a lot of people don't have something physical to ground them. And I mean, you walk outside, it's all cement. You have if you put your bare feet on grass, on dirt, all of a sudden you feel that recharge from earth, whatever. And it's a whole different story. And one of the things that a lot of young people overall don't have is something physical to hold onto and ground them. What are some suggestions for people listening and watching, and hopefully some teens watching?
Literally a rock. I mean, I used to have, and my daughter had some, and I would have some, and rocks in your pocket, so to speak, is grounding. But you can get them, and they're smooth, and you just go to a rock store or a gem store, and you just find one that just resonates with you, and it just feels good in your hand, and then you can that's in your pocket, right? And you can be holding it and rubbing that between your fingers, and nobody even knows, but it's something that can be done that is grounding. Yeah. Just like some of the breathing techniques. You can do these breathing techniques and nobody knows what you're doing, right? You're just taking deep breaths before an exam, before a presentation. It's the, 4 count in, hold for 6, 4 count out, that whatever. And we've got those different breathing techniques on the website, but also they're part of the toolkits, right? So it's those kind of little tools that we want to partake to these kids, and so they can just put them in that toolbox of their own and get them through. But from a grounding standpoint, the tapping, like Jeff was doing, but literally just even a stone. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I learned not too long ago is you have the anxiety, you're feeling overwhelmed, and it's I'm not saying punching bag, but you got to let it out somehow. And that's that's why you see kids stomp their feet as they walk away, because they're like, they have all that excess energy and they need to put it out somewhere. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that they're doing something physical to let the energy out, right? But they have to, and finding constructive ways to do that for the 4 boxes is a pretty good way to do that, I think.
Yeah. And even walking, it's like take a walk around the block. Yeah. Like just get it out, change the scenery, change pace, change your breathing, get it out.
Yeah. Every step you take, you're letting that out too. So that's awesome. Any closing statements you want to give before we wrap it up? Any messages you have for those parents watching right now?
Thank you for this time. And certainly, we have to be vigilant, and I think we have to pay attention. That doesn't mean we have to be smothering. We have to be curious, ask questions, get support from a place that is going to offer accurate information, vetted information. That's one of the things we wanted to do, was be this hub where people could watch the stories, but then get the information and then get the resources or the tools, all without having to do a deep dive into the internet that's going to lead you God knows where. Yeah. Right? That was our goal, was to just be this hub, to be a good source to start with. And we're We are actively looking for executive board members who are passionate about mental health and youth and, want to work on the nonprofit with us. We're actively looking for sponsors and small businesses that want to give back to the people in their community and care about kids. And sponsorship can look lots of different ways.
And we're looking for always teens, because the more teens who want to share their stories, or even if they don't have stories, be part of the youth board to help heal other teens and spread the word. That's I think, wonderful. And we have a lot of kids who love it and love doing it. And they're the lifeblood of our organization. I mean, we really want to be behind the curtain, and we are. But the secret sauce is teens helping teens.
That's awesome. And where can they find you guys besides the website? Teens with the number 4 teens.org?
Help.org.
Oh, okay.
Teens for teens help.org.
Okay.
And then on the website, there's a contact us,
and
they can just reach out, and the email comes right to us.
Awesome. Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you so
I appreciate
much.
your time.
Thank you.